Pokrovsk has now erupted into the absolute epicenter of the fiercest fighting since the fall campaign began. Ukrainian reconnaissance drones, circling high above like mechanical hawks, have reported something truly staggering: the movement of a massive Russian armored column stretching more than 10 kilometers long. This isn't just any collection of vehicles. We're talking about T-72B3M tanks, those modernized beasts of Soviet engineering, alongside the cutting-edge T-90M ProRive tanks and BMP combat vehicles bristling with firepower, all supported by long-barreled artillery thundering from behind the front lines. Ukrainian forces, demonstrating the lightning-fast reaction times that have become their trademark, immediately responded with surgical precision artillery fire and relentless FPV drone strikes. Footage captured from unmanned aerial vehicles shows absolutely massive explosions erupting among Russian formations that have just entered the western area of the city, sending plumes of black smoke hundreds of feet into the air. However, and this is what makes this situation so incredibly intense, the intensity of Russian fire has only increased in response. This indicates something profound about Moscow's determination. They're absolutely committed to making Pokrovsk a strategic gateway into the very heart of central Donetsk. The Russian armored group looked genuinely formidable, a sight that would make even battle-hardened veterans take pause. Then, something extraordinary happened on the front lines of Kostiantynivka, now one of the most explosive flashpoints in the entire conflict. Picture this: artillery booming relentlessly, the sound waves physically hitting your chest amidst an absolutely unrelenting hail of bullets and ground-shaking explosions. In the midst of this chaos, a single Russian tank took center stage in one of the most remarkable survival stories of this war. The T-72B3M achieved what can only be described as a remarkable feat, surviving an astounding 16 RPG hits and withstanding heavy artillery fire, all in a single day of combat. Let that sink in. 16 direct hits from rocket-propelled grenades. That's not just luck. That's superior engineering, reactive armor technology working exactly as designed, and a crew that knew precisely what they were doing. Imagine the crushing pressure on that battlefield. Russian infantry advancing meter by agonizing meter, while Ukrainian reconnaissance drones hovered overhead like predatory birds, their sensors searching relentlessly for any opening to disrupt the enemy formation. Under such demanding conditions, the T-72B3M became more than just a vehicle. It transformed into a mobile fortress, serving as the primary defense for troops attempting to capture positions on the dangerous outskirts of Kostiantynivka. The T-72B3M is absolutely no ordinary armored vehicle. It represents a profound modernization of the classic T-72 generation. We're looking at a machine equipped with a thundering 130 horsepower V92S2F engine, the advanced Sosna U fire control system giving unprecedented targeting capabilities, and critically, third-generation Relight reactive armor. This technology is fascinating. It's designed to minimize the devastating effects of cumulative projectiles and kinetic shells. Every single piece of armor plate, every composite layer on the tank's hull acts like a living suit of armor that actively works to absorb and dissipate the tremendous energy of RPG hits and shockwaves from artillery explosions. Its engineering expertise distilled into protective layers. That day, this tank became the absolute primary target of Ukrainian forces. Anti-tank teams fired portable missiles and grenade launchers repeatedly, 16 separate times, in less than 12 brutal hours of continuous combat. But the results were genuinely surprising. The tank sustained only minor damage to the outer armor layers, the reactive blocks exploding outward to deflect incoming threats, while the main systems, engine, gun, fire control, communications, all remained fully functional throughout the entire engagement. The tank's crew, 3 highly trained men working in perfect synchronization, commander making split-second tactical decisions, gunner acquiring targets with methodical precision, and driver executing evasive maneuvers, acted with remarkable swiftness. Amidst the overwhelming barrage from multiple directions, they constantly shifted positions, never staying stationary, firing their powerful 125mm rounds at Ukrainian fire points, while simultaneously providing critical covering fire for infantry taking cover behind them. the city of Pokrovsk has become one of the most crucial strategic centers in the entire Russia-Ukraine conflict. The constant sounds of explosions, gunfire crackling, and drones buzzing overhead signal unmistakably that the battlefield in eastern Ukraine has entered its most brutal and technologically advanced phase yet. Any military alliance approaching Russia's borders will be considered a direct threat, warned Russian President Vladimir Putin in one of his most controversial statements. Interestingly, at the time of that warning, Ukraine had not even formally applied for NATO membership. So why is Putin so deeply concerned? What makes this Eastern European country such a source of global tension? For Russia, NATO is far more than just a defense organization. In the Kremlin's narrative, shaped by decades of Cold War thinking, NATO is a symbol of Western expansion, steadily moving closer to what Russia considers historic Soviet territory. Since 1999, former Eastern Bloc countries, Poland, Hungary, Czech Republic, and the Baltic states have joined NATO. For Moscow's strategic planners, each expansion eastward means one thing: the encirclement is closing in. The distance between NATO bases and major Russian cities like St. Petersburg is now only hundreds of kilometers. And if Ukraine were to join NATO, the alliance would have direct access to Russia's western border, just 500 kilometers from Moscow itself. That's why, in Putin's calculation, Ukraine isn't just a neighbor. It's the last line of defense, the final buffer zone. On the other hand, Ukraine sees things dramatically differently. Since 2014, after Russia's annexation of Crimea and the war in Donbass, many Ukrainians have argued passionately that the only way to ensure their country's security is to join NATO to receive protection under Article 5. An attack on one member is considered an attack on all. And in February 2022, the world witnessed the consequences. Russia launched a full-fledged invasion of Ukraine. Moscow called it a special military operation, claiming it was necessary to prevent Ukraine from becoming an enemy base on its doorstep. Ironically, however, the results were the exact opposite. While Ukraine had not been close to NATO membership before, after the war began, NATO's support for Kyiv increased dramatically. Hundreds of billions of dollars in military aid and security cooperation closer than ever before. Since the early 1990s, Ukraine has been one of the most active partners in NATO's Partnership for Peace program. The relationship includes joint military exercises, intelligence exchanges, and military capability enhancements. According to NATO officials, this partnership is not military expansion, but an effort to build stability and interoperability. However, following Russia's massive invasion in February 2022, the cooperation has evolved to a much more substantial level. NATO is now the primary coordinating hub in managing military assistance, handling complex logistics, and providing combat training that has transformed Ukrainian forces. Since the war began, NATO member states have provided staggering amounts of military aid. This comprehensive assistance includes advanced air defense systems like the Patriot and Iris-T, modern tanks such as the Leopard 2, Challenger 2, and M1 Abrams, tactical training for tens of thousands of personnel, and massive logistical and intelligence support. Since the beginning, NATO has focused on one critical thing: ensuring that Ukrainian forces not only possess modern weapons, but operate them with high precision. That's why the Western Alliance is now running large-scale military training programs for Ukrainian troops, including elite units like the legendary Azov Regiment, which is trained to master NATO main battle tanks. This training goes far beyond simple vehicle maneuvering. We're talking about comprehensive education in modern armored tactics, coordinated maneuvers with reconnaissance drones, and urban battlefield survival strategies. Instructors from Germany, Poland, and the UK are leading intensive training at Eastern European facilities, where each Ukrainian crew is taught to adapt to NATO-style fighting philosophy: fast, precise, and coordinated. Our goal is not just to transfer equipment, explained one NATO instructor, but also a completely new way of thinking. Tanks are not just war machines, but integral parts of an integrated command system where every element works together seamlessly. NATO member states are engaged in one of the largest logistical operations in modern history. Hundreds of convoys are carrying weapons, ammunition, and heavy equipment across borders into Ukraine daily. This substantial aid includes modern air defense systems, portable anti-tank weapons like the Javelin and NLAW, long-range artillery such as HIMARS and Caesar, reconnaissance drones, main battle tanks, and multi-role fighter jets undergoing pilot training. To strengthen effectiveness, NATO established NSATU, NATO Security Assistance and Training for Ukraine. Headquartered in Wiesbaden, Germany, NSATU serves as the Central Logistics Control Center, staffed by approximately 700 personnel from NATO allies. 3 major logistics hubs in Eastern Europe ensure unimpeded flow of equipment and personnel. This training program has proven to be fundamentally changing the war's dynamics. Ukrainian forces can now effectively operate Western tanks in integrated formations, combining ground attacks with aerial support in ways approaching NATO standards. The efficient movement of Leopard and Abrams tanks through Donetsk's difficult terrain demonstrates significant improvement compared to early 2022. Ukraine is now not just a recipient of aid, stated a defense analyst from the Royal United Services Institute, but part of the evolution of modern military doctrine. This war has transformed Ukraine into NATO's primary strategic partner in Eastern Europe. The training provided doesn't just teach how to shoot or drive. It fundamentally transforms doctrine, discipline, interoperability, and logistical capabilities. The result: Ukrainian units are becoming faster, more precise, and more resilient on the modern battlefield. NATO training teaches not just vehicle operation, but the philosophy of their use. How tanks work in formation, coordinate with artillery and drones, execute tactical maneuvers, and recovery procedures. For example, tank courses at Polish centers teach the entire cycle: operation, maintenance, and combined arms tactics. This allows crews to maximize the tank's contribution to modern combat. When new systems arrive, Western tanks, NATO artillery, air defense systems, without common procedures, they become less effective. NATO training standardizes communications, maintenance, logistics, and sensor integration so Ukrainian units can combine disparate platforms into a single fighting machine, increasing decision-making speed and reducing fatal errors. One often overlooked aspect: maintenance. NATO teaches logistics support networks, damage diagnosis, and spare parts management that keep equipment operational longer, critical when supplies are limited. Without sustainment capabilities, advanced equipment becomes useless. NATO training fills this gap. As a concrete example, Ukrainian crews receive intensive training on Leopard 2 at NATO facilities across Europe, hours-long sessions covering combat tactics, maintenance, and live fire. This accelerates the learning curve, allowing Ukrainian troops to deploy Western tanks effectively in months rather than years. NATO doesn't only train in heavy weapons use, but also in combining intelligence, ISR, FPV drone strikes, and precision artillery. Ukraine, already adept at drones, became even more lethal when NATO taught them systematic synchronization: who searches, who marks, who fires. The result: faster, more destructive strikes with more controlled collateral damage. Professional training improves combat discipline, rules of fire, ammunition control, casualty evacuation, and communication procedures. This reduces panic losses and increases effectiveness. Consistently trained units survive longer, execute complex maneuvers, and make better decisions under pressure. There are tangible indicators: increased effectiveness of Western platforms, more coordinated combined arms operations, and increased domestic production of NATO-caliber systems. However, it's important to note limitations. Training takes time, personnel must be replaced as casualties mount, and logistics remain a limiting factor. While NATO support is substantial, it's not an instant solution. Sustainability has real limits. Why do NATO exercises make Ukrainian forces so resilient? Because training transforms units into integrated combat systems. Tanks, plus artillery, plus drones, plus intelligence. Because interoperability keeps equipment viable in the field. Because training improves decision-making under pressure, making small units more effective. However, results aren't instantaneous and depend on continuous resupply and support. Realistically, NATO training significantly increases the survivability, mobility, and combat effectiveness of Ukrainian forces, making them more resilient than ever, especially with continuous support. In the ever-changing war in Eastern Europe, adaptability is the most valuable weapon. One clear example is the remarkable transformation of Ukraine's Azov troops, from an infantry unit renowned for close quarters combat to one of the most lethal armored forces on the modern battlefield. Azov units have received intensive training from NATO member states at facilities in Poland, Germany, and the UK to master Western battle tanks like the Leopard 2, Challenger 2, and M1A1 Abrams. This training encompasses advanced armored tactics, NATO digital navigation systems, and integration of tanks with reconnaissance drones and long-range artillery. The result, a complete transformation in how they fight on battlefields in Donetsk and Zaporizhzhia. Field reports indicate that Azov tank crews can now conduct sophisticated hunter-killer operations, using advanced optics to locate targets before the enemy knows they're there. The Leopard 2 tanks, piloted by Azov troops, operate in small, fast formations, perfectly coordinated with FPV drones, providing real-time aerial views. In major battles around Pokrovsk and Avdiivka, Azov tanks spearheaded critical counterattacks. They've fully mastered Western technology. Many analysts cite Azov's adaptation speed to NATO systems as one of the fastest in modern history. Professional troops typically take years to master complex systems like the Leopard 2, but Azov units did so in months. This advantage stems not only from excellent training, but from something deeper: motivation. Azov troops understand they're not simply operating tanks, they're defending their homeland. Their combination of fighting spirit and technological sophistication makes them one of the most feared units on the front lines. Now, NATO tanks have become part of Ukraine's signature tactics. In Azov's hands, these armored vehicles are not just war machines, but symbols of adaptation, determination, and military innovation that have made Ukraine increasingly resilient against Russian pressure.